When you hear the term literature, what comes into your mind? Does it make you think of the books you've read or the theater performance you've watched years ago? Does it conjure boring images of old, crumbling parchments and dusty library shelves and dim lit corridors? What really is literature? And how do we define it? Well, I'll tell you this: literature is art. Remember those paintings you see in museums, or that song you could not help singing along to, or the ballet performance you've probably watched on YouTube? Literature is like all of those things. What makes it distinct, however, is that literature uses language, words, as its medium, as the expression of its art. It's like how paintings use lines and colors to convey an image, or how dance uses body movements to evoke emotions. And, as in all art forms, literature is usually difficult to box in a single definition. Traditional definitions of literature could all be summed up in this statement. Basically, it tells us that for a text to be considered literary, it must adhere to specific requirements pertaining to form. Say, in order for a piece of writing to be categorized as a poem, it must be written in verses and divided into stanzas. Most importantly, it must rhyme. That just means that Langleaf's works, which are marketed as prose poetry, would prove to be quite problematic when subjected to the rigidity of this traditional definition of literature. With the emergence of new literary forms, however, the prescriptive nature of traditional literary definitions has been replaced by a more fluid, more theme centered definition of the term. Essentially, it tells us that a text's literariness is not dictated merely by its structure, but rather, more importantly, by its aesthetic value. Any text that possesses artistic potential, whatever form it has, can be considered literature. But how do we determine a text's literary potential? Literary attributes are the non negotiable characteristics that distinguish literary works from non literary text. All literary texts, regardless of genre, must possess these attributes. Of course, as mentioned before, literature uses language as its medium of expression. To intensify meaning, it usually favors connotative words, those that use figurative meaning, over denotative words, terms that convey literal or surface meaning. Literature is both true and fictional at the same time because inasmuch as it draws inspiration from real life events, people, and conflicts, it also uses identifiable stylistic patterns to build a narrative, something that is not possible in our otherwise chaotic and nonlinear reality. As an art form, literature also possesses aesthetic value. It is a linguistic expression that evokes emotion by conveying beauty through words. Literature is also intertextual. It relates to other works of literature. It incorporates established literary conventions, and it belongs to at least one genre of literature. Genre being a French word that means type or kind. Literary genres are identifiable by their literary conventions. These are features of literature, whether of language, subject matter, themes, or form, that readers can easily recognize. Traditionally, we have three main genres of literature according to form: prose, or literary text, written using statements and paragraphs, and divided into chapters and volumes; poetry, or writings that are significantly shorter and more concise than prose, written using verses and stanzas; and possess rhythm. Lastly, we've got drama, which are written in utterances, divided into sequences and acts, and typically performed on stage. Elements of these three very broad genres of literature provide opportunities for interpretation. Some elements are common among these three genres, while others are specific to a single genre. These are the elements that are common in all three genres of literature. However, poetic plot is different from narrative and dramatic plots because it does not portray action in the same manner that the other two plots do. A more in depth discussion of these elements will be touched upon as we progress towards the next modules in this course. For now, take note of these elements and look them up in your spare time. They will come in handy as we critically read the text included in the other modules, and I advise you to focus specifically on symbolism and theme, as most of our readings will be symbolically and theme centered, and will look at how the other elements of the text work together to express a thematic truth. On the other hand, these are the genre specific elements that only work in specific literary forms. For example, poetry is the only genre that possesses rhythm, imagery, and diction. Likewise, drama is the only genre that has length and audience as part of its elements. Simple definitions of some of the terms used in this discussion, especially the literary elements, are posted in the discussion page of this lecture. Once you've checked it out, you may proceed to your first module task. Good luck!